What's up guys, it's Brantzen, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we just hit 100,000 subscribers, which is like more than I'd ever thought that I could make. Granted, a big chunk came from shorts. But those of you guys watching my long form content, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys. And I wanted to show you guys how much I appreciate you by throwing a giant 100,000 subscriber celebration poker event. So if you're in the LA area, or if you can somehow make it to the LA area, it's gonna be at the Lucky Lady on December 9th. It'll be crazy. I'm gonna buy the food and the drinks for you guys because I just wanna say thank you. So let's, drink, no pressure.
Come over, I'm having a party and there's gonna be beer.
Yeah, sure.
Let's eat, no pressure to eat if you don't want to eat, and let's play poker, and let's just have a great time. And of course, this is a regular video, so we're gonna get into a regular 5-5-10 session at the Gardens. I know last video was I lost everything, it was a big loss. In this video, hopefully doesn't happen again, but you'll have to find out, so hit that intro. Cheers.
With the guy Brantzen, who has the Brantzen poker logs.
Let's go!
Tell him he's got a lot of class, and it's all low.
Let's get things started. I'm in for $800 at the 5-5-10, and one of the first hands I pick up is Ace King in the low jack. Solid hand, I open to $35 and get called by the small blind and straddle. 3 ways to a flop of Ace 4-5. Always lovely flopping a pair with Ace King, so when my opponents check, I go for a c-bet of $60. The small blind calls, the straddle folds, and we're heads up to a turn which comes the Queen of Diamonds. Usually, I would expect my opponent to check, but he decides to lead out for $110, and this has me perplexed. And when I'm perplexed, I try to think about the full story to see what makes sense. Let's start from the top. Pre-flop, I raised to 35. He just called from the small blind. He's a fairly aggressive player, so I'd imagine he would have 3-bet with big pocket pairs, ace queen, ace king. I'm likely putting him on a pocket pair, suited connector, or suited ace. Now to the flop. I bet $60, over half the pot, and he calls. If it was just me and him in the pot, he would be calling with a wide range, but it was a 3-way pot and he still had another opponent to act behind him. I doubt he's calling willy-nilly, so I'm canceling out suited hands that completely missed, as well as random pocket pairs. That mainly leaves him with an ace, a flush draw, or a slow played set like 4s or 5s. Finally, where we are now, the turn. A third diamond comes out and he leads out with a bet. Why would he choose to lead out when the flush comes in? Well, either he has the flush or he has 2 pair or a set and he doesn't want the turn to go check and risk a 4th diamond coming out, or he's turning a random ace that he has into a bluff. And honestly, I don't know how often he's gonna turn top pair into a bluff, so I think overall I'm very likely behind. I fold. Now, I don't want to go over this thought process every time, but I think it's good to try and think about poker like this, in terms of a story, in terms of what makes sense. Every time you see your opponent make a decision, you can start narrowing down the story your opponent is telling. And in this case, I think the story leads for me to fold. All right, let's get into the next hand, King 8 of Diamonds. It's a bomb pot, so we all put out $25 and go straight to the flop, which comes 10-6-3, 2 hearts. I'm in early position and the action checks to me. I don't have anything. I check and action checks all the way through. The turn is another 10 and action checks to me again. I actually think it's very believable. I could have a 10 right now. In early position, a lot of people check no matter what they have, while the late position people would likely have bet if they had a 10. I want to go for it, but I chicken out and it checks all the way to the cutoff, who bets $50. The action folds back to me and I have absolutely nothing again, but what does the cutoff have? He really should have bet the 10 on the flop, so I think he's full of it and I'm gonna test it. I raise to $175. Folds back to him. Sure enough, he lets it go and I take it down. Next up, Ace King in the small blind, the hijack and cutoff limp, and I raise it up to $65. Only the hijack limper calls. We're heads up to a flop of Ace 3-8, 2 spades. Nice! Again, we have Ace King. Again, we flop top pair, and I c-bet $45. He calls, and the turn is the 9 of clubs, putting a second flush draw on the board. Most often, I think I would bet here, but there are some good players on this table. I'm going to take a trickier line. I check. This allows my opponent to start bluffing, which he's fully capable of, but unfortunately, he checks back. The river is the king of clubs, completing the backdoor flush draw, but also giving me 2 pair. I could bet trying to get value out of an ace, or I could double down on representing weakness. Again, this opponent is a capable one, someone who would be willing to go for thin value on the river or attempt a bluff. I check. Of course, if he checks back, I'll look like an idiot, but he doesn't. He bets $75. And now I spring the trap. I raise to $300. My line shouldn't really make sense. What strong hand could I have that would check the turn and check the river? So I'm hoping he thinks my raise looks fishy. He thinks about it for a long time, but eventually decides on a call. I show my cards, he mucks, and I take down a pretty unconventional pot. Moving on, I pick up 10 jack of hearts in the small blind. The hijack limps, and I decide to raise it up to $55. Again, when there are limpers, I do not like to limp. I like to raise it up, isolate the limpers. Anyway, only the hijack calls. We go heads up to a flop of ace 9-4 rainbow. I put out a c-bet of $40, and he folds. I take down the pot, and even though I've been winning on this table, I've scoped out the place. There are definitely easier tables, so I table change and luckily pick up pocket aces on the button, the hand of dreams. The low jack opens to $30, the cutoff calls, and of course I'm putting in that 3-bet. I make it $120. Crazily, the big blind cold calls, the low jack calls, the cutoff calls. Somehow we're 4 ways in the 3-bet pot, and the flop comes 7, 8, 9, 2 clubs. It's pretty freaking awful for aces. My opponents could definitely have sets, straights, draws. I'm expecting the action to check to me as the pre-flop aggressor, but instead the cutoff decides to bet out $75. This pot is massive already, and because I switched tables, I had to chip down to the max of 800, so now I'm sitting with 625 in my stack. It's basically only a little bit bigger than the size of the pot. If I was deeper, I would play this differently, but as is, if someone has me beat, well, they have me beat, so I go all in for 625. It folds back to the cutoff, who goes all in for his remaining $500. We run it twice. The first board comes 8 queen, second board comes 7 ace. My opponent chose king 9 of clubs. Somehow we dodged every out in the deck and scooped a super nice one. Next, we got pocket 10s, another great hand on the button. There's a $20 straddle, and the under the gun player opens to $50. The hijack then 3-bets to $150, and it's on me. Wow. Wow, it's technically an early position versus early position 3-bet, which is usually super strong. It's painful, but I actually think the right decision is to just fold here. All right, I fold, but let's see how this pans out. The straddle calls, under the gun calls, and the flop comes 8 jack queen all hearts. I would have had a gut shot to the straight flush, but my opponents could definitely have sets, higher overpairs. My hand wouldn't have been able to stand up to that much pressure. Okay, but it would have been able to stand up to this $75 micro c-bet. What is this? I'm just thinking, don't show me the 9 of hearts and I'm fine. And the dealer slaps out the 9 of hearts. It's painful. It's so much pain. Action goes check, check. River's another 9. Now the hijack bets $600. $600 that could have been mine. The other guy folds, but oh my. After that, I won some pots, lost some pots, but nothing super interesting or significant, so I packed it up and called it a night.
Tonight went pretty smooth. I started out on the 5-5, which you guys didn't see. Won like 500 there, then went to the 5-5-10, and I was in for a total of $1,000, and I was out for $28.10 for a profit of $18.10. So very nice, happy to book a win. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.